everyone. It is 3:07 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and I'm here at my house sitting in front of my piano, and I had a pretty cool lesson yesterday. It was a free lesson, so that's kind of why it was cool for me. And I was able to teach someone who'd never had a voice lesson before, and they came into the lesson feeling pretty, scared, I guess, nervous, maybe, but really just the main thing is, lacking of confidence. And so I was able to listen to that person's voice and their goals and their concerns and really show them their own voice. And by the end of the lesson, it was almost an hour lesson, they left feeling much more confident and feeling like they knew what to do technical wise with how to train their voice, at least after the first 30 minutes of me just spewing a bunch of information to them. So I wanted to take that time to just kind of rehash a little of those basics that I shared with that new student and share it on this platform, because this is going to build my free lesson catalog, hopefully here on Patreon, and then maybe I can export it into another platform or whatever makes sense, So what I always do with new voice students is we start off doing breath exercises. So for me, what that just means is just kind of either sitting or standing, but checking your posture, making sure your shoulders are not collapsed on top of your rib cage. You want to make sure your shoulders are up and back and that your lungs have lots of room to kind of expand down below. And so we just start out with breathing exercises, in through the nose, out through the mouth, and just slowly increasing that breath flow little by little. Through the nose, out through the mouth. And as you kind of become aware of your breath, the idea is to try to place the breath down at your belly button. So instead of breathing in like this, instead of bringing all of that breath up into your shoulders and causing tension up here, we want to try to bring it down low. We want to try thinking down low into your belly button. So I like to put my hands in front of my belly so that I know where my breath is going at first anyway. You shouldn't see the shoulders rise. That's another good indication that the breath is being misplaced. So you want the breath to stay down low. Otherwise, if we start bringing tension or bringing energy up into the shoulders, then it causes all of this tension to build up next to the voice. And that's not where we want the work to be. The voice is a very delicate instrument. It's really just, it's like the size of your pinky fingernail times 2 on each side of your larynx there. So those vocal folds are very delicate, very small muscles, and they can't really handle a lot of exertion. So what we do in voice practice is we focus on taking the workload and taking the idea of the mental workload off of the voice and diverting it down low to the belly. So an analogy that I like to share is thinking of yourself like a tree. With the tree, you got the roots down on the bottom, so your feet are firmly planted on the ground. And then coming up from that, you've got this solid trunk. So your body, your core, you want it to feel trunk-like and feel solid. And like if someone were to come and try to tip you over, you would keep your balance. A strong grounded structure on the bottom gives way to a really nice limber, flexible structure on top, like a tree. So like up here from the diaphragm up, you really want to think relaxed, flexible, wafting kind of like in the breeze, like the leaves and the branches. So the arms want to be relaxed, the neck wants to be relaxed, the shoulders, everything up here. We don't want to carry any tension up in this area, because then it's going to bring unwanted results into the sound of the tone. So I've got this little sheet that I go by, and that's kind of what I'm outlining here right now, is talking about posture, because posture is number one. If there's any kind of like vocal things going on, I usually check posture first, because obviously your body is part of the singing process. The singing process is not just a vocal abdominal thing, it's actually a whole body, a full body process. So that's why posture is so important, you know. So it's going to be different for everyone. You know, if you're sitting and playing guitar, your posture is going to be a little different. You're going to have to adjust it. If you're playing piano, regardless of what you're doing, if you're acting while you're singing or dancing, your posture is going to always be very, very important to what comes out from your voice. So think about the tree. We start from the bottom and we look at our feet. You know, are your feet shoulder width apart if you're standing, you know? So let me demonstrate just a little bit. Feet shoulder width apart, strong stance, grounding, weight evenly distributed. And then you want your knees to be slightly bent so that you can get a little bit of that like shock absorption feeling. And that helps you maintain your balance and your weight distribution. Your hips, you want your tailbone to be slightly tucked in and the spine to feel elongated in the back. And the pelvis will kind of naturally rotate forward. And what that'll do is it'll activate the lower abdominals to help with the breathing process and the breath awareness coming up soon. So after the hips, we go to the shoulders. Just like I said before, you want your shoulders to be kind of rolled back. You know, you don't want to sink down onto your rib cage and your diaphragm, because it'll make breathing way too hard for you. So you want to just rotate, lift, and roll the shoulders back, and see if you can kind of get them a little pinched in the back of your shoulder blades here, just a little bit, enough to where you can kind of stand up and feel that openness up here in the lungs. And so with all that stacked, now at the very end, you want to feel this string coming up from the top of your head, pulling you up and lifting all of your muscles up. And that string coming up from your crown, it straightens and elongates the spine all the way from the nape of the neck down to the bottom here. But with that up, you know, that pulling up of the head, we don't want to see the chin come up, because that's when the larynx will get stretched out and you'll start getting this kind of sound. You want that chin to be nice and comfortable. Chin slightly lowered or parallel to the floor. And then the larynx and throat relaxed, and the tongue relaxed as well. So those are the 5 points of posture that I hit at. Very basic, just every singer needs to know this stuff. And there's definitely a lot of other like tweaks that you can do to posture depending on your physicality, the way you sing, etc. All of this stuff is very tweakable, but it's also very generic too. So the best thing is to just be aware of your posture as much as possible. Like if you start singing something and you feel like the tone is not as strong as you would want, then just take a step back and examine your posture for a second. You know, can I straighten up a little bit more? Am I getting enough breath in, or am I crunching down on my breath supply, you know? So just adjusting little things like that can maybe be the solution to some singing problems. So the next thing that's super, super important is breath awareness. Breath awareness. I used to call this breath control, but it's not a really good terminology, so I've chosen to go with breath awareness. So with breath awareness, it's sort of a thing that you develop over a long period of time. There's not any one way to go about it. It's just about listening to your breath and listening to your body and recognizing the signs and the musculature and the internal mechanisms going on as you start to sort of identify those systems in place. So let's just kind of hit this, straight together. The first thing is to take in more air than you think you need at first and then adjust as necessary. I always say to just take in more air because it's always fine if you run out of air, right? But it's fine if you have extra air left over, but it's not that great when you run out of air at the end of a phrase, So if you're singing something and you notice you're not able to sing it all the way out to the end, try taking a bigger breath and trying it again and see if that helps. Sometimes just taking in a little bit more extra air than you think you need is what gives you the power to sing louder or to sing higher or to sing longer. So always just take in a little extra air, and then as you get used to that feeling of your lungs expanding, then you can kind of adjust as necessary. The second thing is support and activate your muscles around your core to take the workload off of your voice, which we talked about a little bit. We don't want our voice doing all of this strenuous labor, so we have to think about, all right, my voice is not doing the work. It's actually my core that is the strength of my voice. My voice is simply just valving. It's creating the space for a high note or a low note, and that's it. That's all the voice does. It's a valve. So we don't want to put too much pressure on the voice. We want to really carry that weight and workload down low so that it doesn't harm the voice at all. Imagine the air only filling up the space behind your belly button, because otherwise that breath goes up and we don't want it to go up like that. And then keeping your neck and shoulders relaxed. You don't want to see them rise and fall with the breath. So if you're doing that, if you watch yourself in the mirror, you record yourself singing, and you see that happening with your breath, then that's like an indication that you're breathing into your shoulders or you're breathing into your clavicle. And that means we need to start opening up the belly, expanding the breath into the belly in the lower abdominal section so that those shoulders stay put and they don't do that little thing. And thinking about stretching every last drop of air that you can contain and to be greedy with it. So a lot of people think that if you take in a bunch of air, you got to let out all the air, but that's not really the point with all the air. Sometimes the air is really just to create pressure to give you a certain sound. So like, for instance, if I take a really big breath in and I want to sing something quiet, what I'm doing is I'm having to keep that air contained very, very tightly with my abs, and I'm being very greedy with the air supply that I let out, with that air pressure coming out. And that allows me to sing quieter or sing longer phrases with just that little bit of airstream coming out, instead of being like, la, and then all my air is gone, So thinking about being really greedy with that air is going to give you and your muscles time to tone and expand in that abdominal section. And then the last thing I like to talk about with breath awareness is another analogy. I love analogies and metaphors. So the analogy that I have is thinking about these two ballerinas. And you have this one male ballerina who's just standing there, and he's just like lifting and lifting the other ballerina. And then you have this female ballerina that's like got this pose, you know, she's striking a pose, and then she's being lifted. And she's holding her pose very, very strong. So imagining those two ballerinas, I want you to think of the female ballerina, the floating ballerina, as like the core muscles. So thinking about that floating ballerina as being your core, being strong, structured, controlled, and stoic even, you know. And if that floating ballerina were to just lose her composure, she would be really hard to lift. And there would be no show, you know, there would be no grace or beauty or whatever, you know. So that's the floating ballerina. And now the grounded ballerina, the male ballerina, that's just doing this lifting. That's kind of like the voice. The voice is literally just doing what it knows how to do. It's just lift and down, lift, down. The voice does one thing. It valves, it opens. So in that way, you can really see that the majority of the work in singing is going to be strengthening your core and strengthening your relationship between your core and your breath and all of those systems in between. So that's my rundown. I do this for every voice student, and every voice student's different. So some of those things may not apply to you, or some of them may apply to you to a point where you're just not sure how. But either way, the most important thing is to just be patient with your voice. And if you ever start to feel any discomfort or pain, that's a really good indication to just stop, rest, drink water, take bigger breaths, or deeper breaths, I should say, and to maybe just talk to someone, you know, talk to me or something about your voice. So with that, with all that knowledge, that can take a lot of people pretty far, you know, just by examining your posture and by examining your breath awareness. Those two elements are really the most fundamental, basic things about singing. And from there, we just build our structure, you know? So you think about like this foundation on the bottom of a pyramid, and that's it, you know, posture and breath. And then from there, you get to add more layers like articulation, you know, lips, teeth, tongue kind of techniques. And then from there, you get to build resonance, which is all about the pharynx and the space behind your tongue. And then from there, you get to build things like artistry and creativity and, you know, freestyle, improvisation, all kinds of things that are definitely more advanced, but you have to build that foundation to achieve those higher levels. So I hope that gives a good general blanket on my first free voice lesson here. And please let me know if you have any comments or questions. I would love to do some more free lessons as well. Or if you have any songs that you would like me to workshop, that's something that I would love to try as well. Because I think I can explain a lot more vocal techniques with an example instead of just being very general and etheric sounding, you know. So thank you so much for watching, and yeah, I hope you guys have a good day.